Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is our year to shine, and tonight's going to be my first introduction video to the Gifts of Imperfection. It's March 2021 if you're watching this real time. I have a kitty co-host, that's my kitty Annabelle, helping out in the background, and I wanted to give this book a nice little introduction and go over the first bit of it before we hit chapter 1. So, who is Brene Brown? That's the author here. She really came onto the scene in a big way after she was around and doing things, but she really gained some mainstream interest after a TED talk that she gave on shame, because shame is the thing that she's been researching for years and years and years. And I like the way that she brings that work into her introduction to the topic of the gifts of imperfection, okay? I mean, that seems pretty self-explanatory, that we're going to talk about the benefits of being imperfect, right? But she makes some good points about how if it were not written by someone who has really acknowledged shame and fear through all the years that she has researched those topics, that it would be a different message. It might seem more like a cookie cutter description, but she is really acknowledging that you kind of have to realize that there is a dark side until you can see the light. And here we are on our year to shine. I like how at the beginning of when she starts talking in an introduction, there is something here that says, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing that we will ever do. And some of the things that we're going to talk about in this book are crossovers to Simple Abundance, which we had our Simple Abundance year last year with Sarah Ban Breathnach's book, Simple Abundance. And we've talked about the Enough book, Laurie McCammon's book. And we just finished Madly in Love with Me by Christine Arlo. So there are going to be similar topics. She mentioned self-acceptance in this first part. And you guys know it's like, this is my hardest one. But there's almost like this nice little tone from Brene when you first start reading, that it's not like it's just going to be somebody preaching these concepts. And I'm not saying that the previous authors were doing that for us. But if you figure that Brene, if you watch that TED Talk, if you figure that she has her own struggles in terms of, what makes you a shame researcher? You have to probably have some experience of your own with holding on to shame and fear and letting it paralyze you in your life. So she's really encouraging us and letting us know that she's here with us, and that she even says something about having a breakdown at one point, but she just calls that a spiritual awakening, because how else can you describe something? Because you're evolving, you're transforming. We talked about that and ascending and everything last year as well. So she goes pretty personal in the preface to the book. I would recommend reading that. So then she takes us into what she is calling wholehearted living, because we need to know what that is, right? So the front of the book says that this is your guide to a wholehearted life. And it, again, I read this before, but let go of who you think you're supposed to be and embrace who you are. So there's a couple messages there. So I think everybody might have their own sort of definition about what wholehearted living is. We've certainly talked about living from the heart and leading with the gut, and letting our choices be more authentic along the way as we've had a lot of discussions. And so this is her definition of wholehearted living. Wholehearted living is about engaging in our lives from a place of worthiness. It means cultivating the courage, compassion, and connection to wake up in the morning and think, no matter what gets done and how much it's left undone, I am enough. It's going to bed at night thinking, yes, I am imperfect and vulnerable and sometimes afraid. But that doesn't change the truth that I'm also brave and worthy of love and belonging. So that's her definition of wholehearted living. What do you think your definition would be if you sat down to write what wholehearted living would be? Do you think it would really align with that? Probably have some similar elements. So she wants us to know this is a journey. It's not like flip the switch, you're going to all of a sudden be living wholeheartedly. And she's broken the book down into a few sections. She's got, let's see, I'm skipping around here. She does tell us about how it's broken down and how she's going to start us off with the topic of courage, compassion, and connection. Because without that, those are the tools she considers. So without those, then we kind of would be lost, because that's like the foundation, I guess, if you will, of starting on the journey. So once we get some clarity about these tools that she's going to tell us about, then the next chapter will move into the heart of the matter: love, belonging, and worthiness. And listen to this. She says, in this, I answer some of the most difficult questions of my career. What is love? Can we love someone and betray them? Why does our constant need to fit in sabotage real belonging? Can we love the people in our lives, like our partners and children, more than we love ourselves? How do we define worthiness, and why do we so often end up hustling for it rather than believing in it? So those are some things that we'll be discussing. And so there's some words in here as well that we've talked about: love, belonging, and authenticity. There it is. She says, I think it's critically important to define these words. And they're tossed around every day, but rarely explained. And I think good definitions should be accessible and actionable. I try to define these words in a way that will help us unpack the term and explore the pieces. When we dig down past the feel-good words and excavate the daily activities and experiences that put the heart in wholehearted living, we can see how people define the concepts that drive their actions, beliefs, and emotions. I found definitions that have captured the spirit of participants' experiences, and this is in the research that she does. I realize that definitions spark controversy and disagreement, but I'm okay with that, she says. I'd rather that we debate the meaning of words that are important to us than not discuss them at all. We need common language to help us create awareness and understanding, which is essential to wholehearted living. So there's something that just came to my mind when she said putting the heart in wholehearted living. So to me, that would mean that you're not, we've had so many books that have really told us to focus on the joy. And I'm not saying she's going to have us not focus on the joy. But I think the wholeheartedness means that there's a little of everything. It's our whole heart. So we're not necessarily turning our back on the quote-unquote negative things. And we're going to be, she gets frisky whenever I do a video. We're going to be embracing or trying to embrace some of these things that are imperfections. And that's a part of this wholehearted living. Then she goes into a definition of what she calls digging deep. And my memory, I think if it serves me, there's an ending to each chapter, which she calls digging deep. And it's usually really having us contemplate some things and really identify some things. But one thing she says when she talks about digging deep, so say you think like, I'm gonna really dig deep, that would be like, I'm gonna focus on this, I'm gonna get to the heart of the matter, again with the heart. But she said that she realized through a lot of her research and her own understanding of digging deep that DIG for dig stands for a couple things. So the D is for that, like when somebody really needs to dig deep, they're going to be deliberate in their thoughts and behaviors through prayer, meditation, or simply setting their intentions. And the I is for inspired, and they're inspired to make new and different choices. And G is for get going, they take action. So since I made that discovery, I've been digging deep in a new way, she shares with us, and it's been pretty amazing. Yeah. So she will be encouraging us to dig deep during the read of this book. So I also like how there's a message of hope here. And I have to say that when I think about when I was reading this book the last time, my life was very different. In fact, I was reading a little bit of this in bed, and Annabelle was rubbing on the book and kind of smelling it and stuff. And I said, oh, I wonder if you smell, Rocky or Lily on it. And those are my past kitties. And they've since passed on, and they were both alive when I was reading this before. So that's just one thing that's different. But I was thinking about how I think the read of this book is going to be a different experience for me in this new place that I am in my life now. And so this message of hope is really something that I appreciate now. So what I hope to contribute is what she wants to tell us about too. This book is full of powerful topics such as self-compassion, acceptance, and gratitude. I'm not the first to talk about these subjects, and I'm certainly not the smartest researcher or the most talented writer. I am, however, the first to explain how these topics work individually and together to cultivate the wholehearted living. And maybe more importantly, I'm certainly the first person to come to these topics from a perspective of someone who's spent years studying shame and fear. So that's what I said really at the beginning of this video. Courage, we talk about courage a lot. She says, courage sounds great, but we need to talk about how it requires us to let go of what other people think. And for most of us, that's really scary. Compassion is something we all want, but are we willing to look at why boundary setting and saying no is a critical component of compassion? That's interesting because that's our self-care challenge for this month. That we are supposed to be using our voice, and in some cases that means saying no when it's the right decision. And even if we're disappointing someone, are we willing to say no even if we're disappointing someone? Yeah. Belonging is an essential component of wholehearted living, but first we have to cultivate self-acceptance. Why is it such a struggle? Yeah. That's what we were asking with the last book. So she says something too, and this is just an introduction. This is not the way the book is going to go, but I just want you to have a flavor of what this author is going to be like. So she just says every time she sits down to write a book, she thinks, why is this book going to be worth writing, and what are people going to be getting out of it? And like, what kind of contribution am I hoping to make through it? So I think the most valuable contribution that I can make to the ongoing discussions about love, belonging, and worthiness stem from my experience as a shame researcher, as a shame researcher. So yeah, that would be a very novel thing to come to this topic with, because other people wouldn't necessarily have all that research to back it up. And how it's like you can't ignore that shame and even the self-hatred that we were talking about with the last book, that they are a part of what stops people from living wholeheartedly. Coming at this work with a full understanding of how how shame keeps us feeling afraid and small, it allows me to do more than present great ideas. This perspective helps me share real strategies for changing our lives. Yes. If we want to know why we're also afraid to let our true selves be seen and known, we have to understand the power of shame and fear. If we can't stand up to the never good enough and who do you think you are, we can't move forward either. I only wish that during those desperate and defeated moments of my past, when I was knee-deep in things, I could have known what I know now. This is really beautiful too, and you're going to love it, because remember how the last book ended with this whole shine thing? Well, look at how this book is starting, and I just almost got chills when I was just reading this. So this is the end to the introduction. Owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Embracing our vulnerabilities is risky, but not nearly as dangerous as giving up on love and belonging and joy, the experiences that make us the most vulnerable. Only when we're brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. Isn't that awesome? So that's just a taste of Brene's introduction for the book. The first chapter, like she said, is going to be about courage, compassion, and connection. Those are the tools for our journey. So stick around. I hope you get your hands maybe on the book or the audio version of it and listen along. I think the audio is read by the author, so it's another way to sort of connect with her. She seems like a pretty cool, down-to-earth person. And thank you for being here. As always, leave me a comment, say hello. I love hearing from you guys. And Annabelle, I don't know, she's giving us the cold shoulder here, but we'll be back for another video soon. Love to you all. Bye-bye.